Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for asking me to speak this morning. I hope to stimulate and challenge and get us all thinking even further about this critical matter of bullying and harassment. It's been incredibly topical in the last year, as you all know, and I understand it was touched upon in your program yesterday. I do hope we can have a good discussion once I've gone through a few points that I'd like to get out to you. Through all of this discussion, I ask you to consider every point from your perspective in the clinical situation day in, day out. Your perspective, okay? So let's go. This is a wee scenario, and I'll let you read that. But Dr. Jones is a first-year registrar in internal medicine, and she comes to you. You're one of the SMOs in internal medicine. You're not in a leadership position, but she comes to you because she thinks she can talk to you, and she's upset that one of your colleagues has been threatening her with poor grades on her assessment and has been setting her, in her opinion, unreasonable work tasks that she just can't cope with, and just doesn't believe that she can actually achieve. If you think internal medicine doesn't have many bullies, well, we'll talk about that a bit later. What are you going to do? Right? Well, later on you can give me some ideas, but what are you going to do? Here's another one. Last year, another registrar left early and on exit indicated to you that he felt he'd been bullied by the same SMO, same doctor. He reported the consultant had ranted and raved about any errors the doctor had made and would make disparaging remarks even in front of other people and other colleagues. Okay, so you've got a current registrar who's come to you, you know about this. What are you going to do? Okay. Right, what is bullying and what is harassment? I promise you today isn't all about definitions and long treatises on various matters, but I do think it's worth just thinking through what are we actually talking about. I like this one. It's from Rax. They got it from somewhere else, no doubt, but I like it, and I think it sort of, to me anyway, gave me a clearer idea of what the heck we're talking about. And again, have a wee look at that. To threaten, oppress or tease, either physically or morally, and includes some of those things. Public humiliation, persistent criticism, personal insult, professionally undermining a person's professional ability, and consistently undervaluing effort and abuse of power. And remember that in many definitions of bullying, there is a whole, or discussions about bullying, there's a whole aspect of considering not only the overt shouting, yelling, put down stuff, but the subtle manipulative behaviours that can sometimes occur. What about harassment? It's a bit of a tougher one. We all use the word and we know it, and we talk about people being harassed, etc. But what does it really mean? And is it the same thing or not? And it's tougher. But here's a definition that I think helps a bit: the act of tormenting by persistent attacks and criticism. Remember, attacks don't have to be overt. To repeat my previous point. The act of making unwelcome intrusions upon another. Okay, so I'll just leave you with those. What am I not going to talk about today? Well, I am not going to go through a whole lot of codes of practice, ethical constructs, and other things. Look, they're out there and they're wonderful. There's some amazing stuff from medical council, from the NZMA, from universities, from colleges, from international bodies. And in the most, they're pretty good. They say the right words and they summarise the problems well. What I am going to talk a lot more about today, or hopefully engage with you about, is what do we do about it? What do we do about it? So I recommend, though, that you go to some of those sources because they really are excellent. But one thing I'm not intending to do is lecture you on such matters today. I don't know about you, but I get this a bit. Is there really an issue? Is there really an issue? I'm going to go through a few things. The RDA surveys we're all aware of, and the RDA themselves have quite openly said they're not the greatest surveys in the world. The methodology and the actual processes and so on that were used as part of their surveys aren't perfect, and RDA do not profess that these amazing sources of information, but you'll have seen some of this information, but I wanted to just give you some key sort of points just to help kick us off. So 600 RMOs answered the surveys, and 600 RMOs have experienced, should I say, and or witnessed those behaviours, and 435 were attributed to SMOs, the others to nurses in various positions. And these were a few particular things that the RDA highlighted in their summary of their surveys, and that concept of bullying or these behaviours just being part of the game, the rite of passage. A lot of RMOs concerned about career blocking, subtle and not so subtle, and a great fear of what will they say in my references 2 months' time or 2 years down the line or whatever. And even if I did report, no one would listen. It wouldn't make a lot of difference anyway. And here's a few more things from the surveys. 10% had personally experienced or witnessed sexual harassment, 47% had witnessed bullying, and 43% had personally experienced inappropriate behaviours in the last 2 years. Now, you can argue the figures and what does that really mean and were they all real, but we can't ignore those sort of things. And there's been lots more. You'll again be very aware of the surgeons and their tremendous work, frankly, in this space, their expert advisory group that has spent a huge amount of time and effort and passion, frankly, in putting together some substantive research and findings in and around bullying in the surgical specialties. And I recommend it to you, and it really is fine work. Others, the Medical Students Association, and their surveys and their comments, and I know Elizabeth Berryman spoke to you yesterday. Issues emerging from the medical schools. At the CMO table, the group that came to us first of all about bullying as an issue in our DHBs were the medical schools, interestingly. And of course, there's been recent articles in the NZMJ and there's statements from various parties that you'll know of. Now, I'm a chief medical officer for much of the time in my work, and do I see it? Oh, yes, I do. And I really have been seeing it for the entire time I've been in leadership roles. And obviously, I have a crack at trying to deal with these matters. But anything that gets to me or one of my colleagues in a DHB, just by its very nature, has to be the tip of the iceberg. It just has to be. In terms of what's under there, in terms of that actually comes to the CMO level. Okay, now some hopefully even more interesting stuff. What have we said about it this year and all the publicity? And what do we all make of it? And I'm going to be really interested to get your thoughts on this. And also, as I say, when I said right at the start, what are we going to do about it? And, you know, I've heard so many different comments, and I guess you've had your own discussions over operating tables and in tea rooms and on ward rounds about, you know, what is this all about, and is it really such an issue, and so on. Here's just a few things that people have said to me. I've taken out the expletives. How can I feed back to a doctor in training if no matter what I say about that doctor's performance or suitability for our specialist, in other words, I don't think you're really made for this specialty, if anything I say, any negative communication in that respect is perceived as bullying? How can I be a good supervisor? How can I be a good mentor if anything I say is going to be potentially taken as bullying? Can argue whether that's a reasonable position or not, but I've certainly heard that on, I don't know, a version of that, 10 occasions. This one, it's not just doctors. Bullying's a part of life, and look at the other professions, and look, life's tough. Shouldn't we just get on with it? That's as best as verbatim I was able to record from what one particular doctor, in good faith, said to me, in the sense that he was passionate about this and was personally somewhat offended about the fact that what some of his behaviours could be considered as bullying or harassment. And this one, and I've really heard this one a lot, it's all the surgeons. It's the bloody surgeons. And look, the stats say that, yeah, they're worse, but, you know, let's be clear about this. It's across the profession. And what's also very clear is that there's bullying and harassment and inappropriate behaviours exhibited by people at all levels of seniority within the profession. It's not a rarity to have a first-year registrar bullying house officers or medical students, etc. And let alone, I haven't even touched on aspects of other professional groups and our relationships with nursing, with midwifery, with allied health, etc., and all aspects of that. I haven't as yet even mentioned non-clinical management and what I describe at times as two-way bullying behaviour and harassment. But look, I hear this one a bit, and look, the surgeons are fronted, but we all need to consider this. Interestingly, in at least some of the studies, some specialties you would think they won't have a problem. Register a bit more highly than you think. Paediatrics, O&G, my clinical specialty. No, psychiatry. You know, so it's interesting. And we've got a lot less information about what's happening out there in primary care, but as we have more and more RMOs and trainees in primary care settings and community settings, it's an interesting one. And is it a problem, any more a problem in 2015 than in years past? Well, it just doesn't matter. You know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but it doesn't matter. It's a heck of a problem still. I would put to you that, sure, it might not be in the overt sense as bad as, you know, 30 years ago when I was a boy, when it was, you know, there were literally the shouting, swearing, yelling surgeons and so on that were around. They might not be there now, but there's all sorts of more subtle and more sophisticated and more manipulative types of bullying out there now. And there's a heck of a lot of stresses on us all and on RMOs and, of course, people at different points in the hierarchy. And, again, you know about them all, but, you know, it doesn't matter. It's there, and we've got to keep addressing it. Okay, what are we going to do about it? And you notice I use the word we, because we're all in it. And it's a matter of what are we going to do about it. And believe me, I haven't got all the ideas and all the answers to this, and no one has. But here's some starters for 10, and naturally I'd love to hear more from you as I and many, many others try and show some leadership in the profession in terms of turning this around. Well, I reckon, as simplistic as it is, that the current publicity is a good thing. You know, we've put it out there, and we've faced up to the issue, and it's in the public arena as well as in the professional arena, and we've at least said there's a problem. Some of you may agree or disagree as to the level of the problem, but we've put it out there. That in itself is an action. It's not the whole answer, we know that, but it will mean that each of us in different clinical and non-clinical situations think twice or three times in terms of our behaviours, or perhaps when we feel we've behaved in a certain way, how we reflect on those and what we make of them. And ownership or responsibility, it's self-evident, it's part of the same thing to some extent, isn't it? It's, as a profession, as individuals, we say, yeah, okay, there could be a problem here, and what can we do to make this sensible while still being able to give good, sound, constructive, robust advice, comment, criticism, etc. within our working situations and our training situations. Resources? Well, I mentioned a whole lot of codes and all of that, and look, they're useful. There's a whole lot of HR stuff and things out there as well. And yeah, look, they're really useful. And I don't want to underestimate them. You know, you could say, though, if you've got to look it up on the document management system and think through a process, well, that's not going to be a huge help. On the other hand, sometimes they really are when you're faced with a situation, such as the one I presented right at the start, and think, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And to help us think these through. There are external resources, and of course, despite my comments, medicine's not alone in this bullying space. It's not very often that I actually give big raps to a document produced by a government agency, to say the least. But I'm giving real raps to this one from WorkSafe. It is really, really impressive. And I just can't remember when I last said that about a government agency document. And I recommend it to you. It's not overly long. It's practical and it's real. It's not just about doctors by any means. And it's interesting that there's such a good resource right under our noses. Mention was made before of a national working group, whatever we want to call it, that's trying to look at these matters in terms of how the profession acts. And it's specifically medical, though. It's medical, unashamedly so. It's about doctors, and you could argue that it could go, that it needs to go more widely. And key strategies, well, look, these are a few of them, but I want to just highlight a couple of things. Empowering bystanders is a bit of a, it's a, I don't know, it's one that sounds simple and sounds easy and obvious and overt, but what does it really mean? But it does mean that if you see or party to or have some involvement in these behaviours, you've got to do something. And how can we create an environment where people can do that, particularly if they're in positions somewhat down the pecking order? Probably a little easier for us. On the other hand, when we're talking about one of our colleagues, it can be tough. But if you're down the pecking order, how do you stand up and say, that's not great? I was hugely impressed in my own organisation about a year ago when, sad to say, one of our colleagues really did embark upon a tirade of abuse and comment in a clinical situation that was totally unacceptable. And the person who called him to account was an orderly. And as a follow-on, there were two really interesting things that happened. Firstly, the boss of the orderlies told him off, said, "How dare you? How dare you?" But also, I had an SMO come to me who had been there, and he said, "I'm ashamed that it took an orderly to take on our colleague on this one." And it was, however sad it was a fascinating situation. And you can be sure I did all I could to make sure that orderly wasn't in any way compromised for his behaviours, which were, I thought, outstanding. This leadership one, yeah, but that's at every level, isn't it? You know, sure, our bosses and our leaders have to do the right things here and lead by example, but they also need the skills, and they need to be endorsed and able to take these steps. If a clinical leader in your situation is going to do something real when you take things to him or her, he or she really needs to know that the majority of the profession agree that this has to be worked through. And they need that level of support and endorsement. And they need skills, and we need high quality HR staff in our DHBs. Pretty variable around the country, it's fair to say, in terms of skills in this area in HR. Some DHBs are blessed with some great people who are tremendous at all of this. In other places, not great, and that doesn't help. So that's a real factor. Tough calls, it's an interesting one, isn't it? You know, this idea that we hang out a few people to dry, and that'll fix it. Make an example of a few people, and that'll send the right messages. Well, yeah, maybe. Still a lot of natural justice stuff you've got to work through. And does everybody deserve to have their error of their ways pointed out and given an opportunity to perhaps show different behaviours? But what about the long-term bully in our system, and we all know them, and some tough calls that perhaps should be made or could be made, but how do we do it? How do we do it? And what does that really mean? Leadership I've commented on, but I re-emphasise that's for all of us. And look, professionalism, such an overused word, but look, it is what it's all about, and I don't apologise for re-emphasising it. And persistence. We're on a bit of a publicity role at the moment, and it's out there, but this is going to take ongoing attention as we make this as real as possible in the profession. I've got another example for you. On a teaching round, and there are two teams on the round, so two SMOs and registrars, house officers, medical students, and your senior colleague, your SMO colleague, interrogates his house officer to the point where the house officer is shocked, really. He can't respond adequately and is visibly upset, patient after patient, nailing them on clinical point after clinical point, or lack of knowledge, or what they've not done, or what they've done wrong, again and again. What are you going to do? And what would I do? Each of us has to think that through. Okay. Now look, I've said enough. I'd like us to interact. We could, if you've got things you would like to interact about and disagree with me about. What I would really like, on behalf of the many, many people that are trying to fashion meaningful tools for us, is to get your ideas on how we continue to address these matters.